Oh, sure. It's a pizza. Oh, there you go.
All set?
There you go.
All set, okay. Hello, 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 hello. Welcome to the next in our almost unseemly barrage of visiting writers who are coming one atop the next here. I'm Dan Rosenberg, and it's a pleasure and honor to welcome you all to Rachel Abramowitz's reading tonight. A little bit of bureaucratic stuff before we jump in. While Rachel is reading, as is our custom now, there'll be lots of pauses between poems, and we're going to invite you to just raise your hand, wave at her, and ask a question, make a comment. I think one of the things that I love the most about bringing writers into this community is when the community shows up and shows itself to be the thoughtful, engaged, sometimes challenging crew that it is and that we are. So that's how we're gonna structure this. Poems, poems, poems. Rachel will look around, and if you want to jump in and just say, like, I'm reacting to this thing that just happened, just wave, and she will respond to that. I'll also know that Rachel has brought books that will be for sale: The Puzzle Monster and The Birthday of the Dead. I will be your sales guide, so you can buy them through me with cash, Venmo, cards, whatever, and she'll be glad to sign your copy, and then I will keep her money, and that'll be good. All right, bureaucracy over. I get to introduce Rachel Abramowitz now. She gave an amazing master class just, an hour ago? What is time? About ekphrasis and obsession. And what I found myself thinking about listening to it is like how much these master classes are predicated on the idea that someone comes to Wells to share sort of their obsessions, how their brains work, how they are as artists in the world. And Rachel's maybe more explicitly than most was predicated on like, what is it to see a thing? What is it to pay attention? What happens to us in our bodies when we actually give ourselves the chance to like slow down and look at a thing and attend to it and to ourselves? I thought it was really beautiful. You said something like, look at the painting and allow it to work on your eye and your mind. And I was like, that is a quality of attention that I think of as necessary for the creation of art. But it's not often articulated that way. So there was a beautiful master class, and I'm really glad those of you who were able to be there were there. But now she's here to read her poems. And of the work, Dan Beachy Quick, who is always reliable for brilliant insight, he described her book as reaffirming the ancient connection between the living and the dead. And he quotes one of Rachel's poems saying, "How easy it is to talk to the dead. I have a standing appointment." Abramowitz writes in Your Life is Art, and Beachy Quick continues, "Hers is a poetry that seeks to keep that appointment, reminding us to do the same." And I felt that while reading this book in particular, that reminder, that implication and invitation. But preparing to talk with my students about her work, I found myself making the wildest of notes on her poems. Preparing for the class felt like writing poems when the thought is too big for its words, even as the words are shaping and determining that thought. And so I thought for my introduction, I would just give you a sample pulled straight out of my teaching notes to give you a sense of like what reading Rachel Abramowitz's poems does to me. So on one of these poems, I said, her relationship to research is like a miner's relationship to the earth. It supports her, it's in the way of what she's after, and what she's after could not exist without it. Here, the parts of a bell become the parts of the poet, and they are sounding. Obviously good teaching notes. This one says, Abramowitz is interested not in history, but in what history suggests, how it can be transmuted into poetry that meditates on the voice inside us that keeps saying, you have to get to the root, and I don't know where that formula begins. Another one says, there's a comfort with the dead and a discomfort with the living in this poem that is reframed by the title to be essentially about the great masters of Auden's Musée des Beaux-Arts, the dead who left behind art we can talk with. On this one, this poem is worried about how attending to something like beauty might make us humans want to conquer it. And just to say this poem is worried about something feels true, like the poems have agency. And then this last note was actually on The Sharpest Milk Knife in the World, whereas I said the ending echoes one of the saddest poems in the world. But this poem doesn't particularly care if you know that. It just goes for your gut anyway. I could keep going on about them, but what I'm really saying is that I think of Rachel Abramowitz's poems as poems that make poetry happen. The book is a gift, and I'm so glad she's here to share it with us tonight. So please join me in welcoming Rachel Abramowitz.
Thank you. I'm gonna tear up. Good heavens. That was absolutely stunning. Are you a poet? Goodness me. Well, thank you all so much for being here, and I'm so thrilled to be in this wonderful space, and thank you, Dan, for inviting me, and I'm just always thrilled to share words with people and all of your ideas from the class today. I'm inspired by you, so I feel reinvigorated. I want to go home and write poems, which I haven't actually felt in a little while, so thank you. Thank you. I owe this to you. I am going to start with some ekphrastic poems that we looked today at in the master class at some Brian Catling paintings, and this was one of my obsessions for a while, and I'd like to reignite it. So I'm going to go back and visit his work again, and I often take his titles because they're so wonderfully poetic and weird, and you can start with something very evocative that way. So this is called Flee with Martyrdom. 1. I was outside myself, shearing lambs small as snowy planets, when the wind, that blasted scholar, tied the ends of my hair together with ash, and lo, I was wifed. Our dream recurs, rancor dull as pewter. I take up the rusted calipers, squeeze each stretching shadow. 2. I haven't thought this much in decades. It's uncomfortable where I live. I live there forever, wander with my flapping standard from room to room, make up clouds, and beneath them, more clouds. What luck. I wear the epaulets of reason over my ordinary burial clothes. I kneel every chance I get. This is another Catling inspired poem. Moonish on gold. As I tweeze each metal leaf onto the memorial buttocks of the moon, a bell clangs inside its one-chambered lung, striking benthic terror into the muddied sugar cube I hold in my cheek. I could savage you, moon. I could live out my loathing like an eternal space breeze, silent as a potato. You have nothing on me but the cave in my jaw and the love of the homeless meadow I also love, for which I will never forgive you. You are junk, a living bulb I could toss in a bucket. Think what you want. When we go bludgeoning, we go like we're offering our teeth to the gods. And maybe I'll do 3 and then pause and then 3. It seems like it's magic number. Unshriven with company. I see you, ghosty. I see you fall from the crabapple like a worm, like ox blood, onto the milky dirt. I have lain my table. I ask only for the twists of the fig tree, Georgic. Wine nearly blue, cheese old as a saint. It has never been summer here. Surely you can sniff that. God, will this romance never end? Willful dust upon the eyelashes, grass a spear, the moon the skull's prisoner. I am tired of feeling these things. The harvest arrives, jealous as a virgin. You know what to do. Pause there for a moment. Is there any thoughts, questions? Do you want to get up with me?
Silent as a potato?
Silent as a potato? You were commenting on that?
Yeah.
Oh, that made me happy.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad. Thank you.
It's fun to put that against like marmoreal buttocks.
I learned the word marmoreal on a date, on a first date, because the guy like said it, and I was like, that sounds like an amazing word. Like I had to go look it up later. So the date did not work out, but it kind of worked out also, because then I learned this amazing word. So always go on first dates, I guess. Okay, we'll do a couple more. Restoration. God damn it, you're dead again, and this is no way to greet your new garnet, stuck squarely in the forehead of the hermit toad, metamorphic splay, weak wood-hammered heart. Goldmanite, use what seeds you can to drape this mountain in clouds, muses in the forest again, gray hoods simpering, habits dust their knees. Dodecahedral whispers gas the atmosphere. I have bloodied the forest, so no nymph will find flower here, no safety for the tongue drunk. What huddled cave have we made of our unplundered selves? Nocturne 2. Always it is time to rotate the azaleas. Whatever is at rest bears sibilant fruit, its radius hushed. Come, balm, slather the pond of my skin, the sleepers in the fluted night. On Sundays, I strong-arm my way across the sky, wheel myself over topaz fields and bell towers, and year after year, the husbands wake like flowers to their limits, to their existence everywhere. Waking Ruin 3. And Waking Ruin is a Catling title. The thousand-eyed beast has taken, knitted in a sack, me far from here, to ancient Paris, to Budapest imagined. Every inch of earth has he walked upon in his egg-soled sandals, outrunning the fevered sunflowers. Each place is an artery, darkening the sky as a supplicant darkens parchment, rabbit brandishing spear, helmeted snail on the attack. From each town do we abscond with the last of the salt. The forest spills its lungs into the moat, and the thousand-eyed beast stops to sip at the underwater flowers. Cows follow us as we quake the land, as we shout in the trees. In pursuit, a bride of 1,000 wombs, for whom spring is an egg inside an apple, inside a moon, nude and saltless. Pause there. Counting to 3. It's actually very difficult when you're doing this. I'm like, how many was that?
I love the dodecahedral as a descriptor. It's so good.
Actually, as I was reading, I was like, really? Like, did I really? It's that work? So I think it was validation.
It did, like, in so many of these, it does, you get a sense of, like, this voice as a magpie voice, just being like, I like this word, and I'm gonna jam it in places where it doesn't necessarily, like, conventionally fit, but it's gonna take a shape. Do you feel like, are you cobbling together when you're doing these, or are you, how does that?
In that one in particular, it did feel that way, and I remember the feeling of writing it, being like, ooh, does this fit somewhere, and kind of that 3D geometry of it, and then in others, like Memorial, or there's another, I'll read a poem if I can find it, we'll be able to find it, in the first book, the word baronial, I was like, I'm writing a poem with that word in it, like, that's it, I think it blossomed from there, so yes. I mean, we were talking today about material, right, like these words and the sounds are in many ways like paint, or like clay, or like marble, whatever it is, and you are like, how does it work and fit, and does it go with this other chemical, or what does it look like jammed up against this object? So it feels, it's a good question, it feels in a lot of ways, sort of the material of it feels very palpable, it's very tangible in a way to me. And then thinking about like math classes that I had, like how many sides does a dodecahedron have? And somebody will know.
12.
12.
Yeah.
Yes, math and poems.
Rather than making eye contact there.
Amazing. Okay, I'll do a couple more of these and then we'll go into the book. So I'm going new to older. Nocturne. I have stayed as long as I could, as your little thief, as your garbage king, your bread slasher, that old evil. I have gathered twigs for your night meal, silvered with frost and clung to by insects. You have asked me to present a theory. Sit by this fire while I milk my meek brain. My ears are stone fruits, ripening and falling to the carpet. I've told this story before in the small summers, the air warming like an orchestra over the grass. I have lain in the low places, a leviathan parted. Salt me away, spread my skin over the walls. I ask only for the amulet of the least righteous, eyelid of mourning, which I swallow with my bare hands. So let me do one more here. Yes. Husbandry. I wear my kid-skin shoes to hell. I have promised to remove them before bed, before skinning the covers from the fleshed mattress, before severing the breasts of the songbirds, enumerating my sins. My shoes slip on and off like bile through teeth, and my feet curl back on themselves, bark from inner green veins. I sleep the sleep of a storm drain, of burning coal. How the ibex clamor at the windows, how their horns scrape at the sill. Each cloud passing through the room wields a staff, herds me off a cliff. In the morning, my shoes are redder than the night before. How many was that? Like two? Three? What are numbers? We'll pause there as I find another poem. Any thoughts?
Was that islet, did you say Islet of Mourning?
Yeah.
Is that related to the mixed fortunes of crocodiles and men?
Say it again?
Do you know the book, Islets of Mourning?
I don't.
It's Peter Beard's book about crocodiles and men. Yeah.
Ooh, I have to go investigate that now.
I thought I'd never heard of it in any other context.
I love that. Look, crocodiles, like, they just surface and you just see. They have not evolved in millions of years or something. They were just like, nope, perfect killing machine, no notes. Like,
No notes.
Good. Love it. All right, so start with the first poem in this book, moving away from ekphrasis to a little bit of the news. There was several years ago a news article that this was the title of the news article: "Severed head of a giant 40,000-year-old wolf found in Russia." And you're like reading that like next to like the lifestyle section. You're like, ooh, throw pillows. And also this. I don't speak her language, but I see her tongue, pink-tipped and red underneath, underworld brawn. I will her into my house, but she paces outside the door and makes a sound like fire in her throat. I have only so much law. I have only so many days to her cold eternity. She has been waiting in the rime, though her coat is thick enough for this new earth. I watch from my window steam rise from soft tissue, and have no spells for such a skull, such promising teeth. I can only transform numbers into things. This many hairs make a braid you can hold in your hand, this many years, and you will never see yourself again. There are depths some can sound, but what reaches for you there will be made of flesh so terrible you would cut off your own to be free of it.
Rachel, can I break our pattern?
Yes, may.
We talked a little bit about this poem in the class, and particularly why it's the first poem and how that was like this entry to the book. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about like your thoughts about sequencing a manuscript, or like what made you think this is the poem I want to start with.
Ooh, excellent question. I think I'm not amazing at sequencing. I'm not gonna lie to you about that. So I think it's more intuitive organizing or piling poems together, as opposed to more of like a linear, saying this one speaks directly to this poem. It has to be 3 poems later than this one, so that you have the resonance. Like, I just don't have, I think, that broader way of thinking, which is probably why I don't write fiction, actually, because these things are very much like set pieces. And so I think that this poem, this first one, spoke to not speaking a language and being like, I don't understand, and I don't I only have so much material and so much time, and I hope that the journey we're going to go on together, if you read it through or read it at all, or read just several poems, that it will disquiet you in the way that we talked about today. That there's something ancient that I want to talk about, but it's come to life in this interesting zombie-like way. And maybe I should write more about zombies. That'd be really fun. But this is sort of a zombie-like poem, and then to start with it, that it's a new kind of life, but it's not real life, right? It's not alive. So I'm not even sure that answers your question, but
It's great. It dovetails pretty directly with how we were talking about it, so if that was close to intention, it came through.
I love, that's great, that's fantastic, that's very rare. That's wonderful.
I was just thinking the only thing that would make that title better is if it was Severed Head of 40,000-year-old giant wolf found in Russia again.
The sequel.
It's like a lot of
I feel like it's happened
I
more
like to
than
Google it.
once in
Yes.
Russia.
They keep popping up, don't they? I know, people in Russia, they're like, another one? Great, who cares? Page 10, not,
Checking them out.
not that interesting.
I can see her tongue too, it's fine.
Exactly. Like, good for you. Oh, there were in sort of maybe I'll read Your Life in Art, because it does talk about the dead, and also there's a Bruegel in there, and we talked about the Bruegel painting, a different Bruegel painting, but a little callback. Your Life in Art. Unlike the living, the dead tell you when they are tired of you. They make endless pots of wedding soup and oil their breasts in the moonlight and ask what the tides are doing and the rhododendrons. Wardrobes awash in green silk, blackberries tucked behind their ears. They will nod when they would like you to pack up your red pail of sea glass and take the sun away. How easy it is to talk to the dead. I have a standing appointment. We lunch in the old ways, pretending to our great estates. The sea rattles beneath the earth, and we turn our eyes to one another. We talk of Bruegel and his winters, though here it is spring, and the bathers down by the rocks feel only an occasional gust. There is no plague, and when the sun dips behind the beech trees and the sandwiches, light as foam, are all gone, I walk back up the drive and feel the magnets in my blood like ancient hands pull me toward the dirt. And actually, driving up here, there are a lot of landscapes that look like this Bruegel winter landscape. You're like, oh, he's not painting about America, but you're like, there's something similar here. Like I'm feeling it.
Yes, founder of upstate New York.
Yeah.
This cover.
For sure.
Did you counter the John Bergman poem that's also responding to Bruegel's Winter Landscape? There's a Bergman poem.
Probably. I'm gonna have to go find it again. Yeah. I just unpacked my books after 8 months of them being in boxes, and so it's like seeing old friends. You're like, oh hi, like here you are, like let's hang out. So I'm gonna have to go find my Berryman again. Good old friends. Here is an ekphrastic poem, The Puzzle Monster, and this is about 3 studies of Lucian Freud by Francis Bacon, 1969. Thousands of eyes are roaming around. The cage demarcates only the cage. Unhappy ape, praying for everything. Museum ache, zinging his whole spine. Such velvets and golds for living through the worst. There is nothing else, says the ape. Eat. Flowers bloom on his skin. We scoop up the deep reds and purples of the insides of meat, of fruit. Blessed be the monster who made you, who makes you still. And actually, facing that poem is a poem called Dead Color, and it's also about a Dutch still life, those wonderful ones that look from afar, and you're like, oh, beautiful, vase of flowers, la la la, and then you go closer and it's like something's rotting, and there's like a beetle, and maybe there's something sort of gross and horrible and decaying, and it's just such a wonderful memento mori feel, but also feels very cheeky in a funny way. They're like, I tricked you. Like, you just put this beautiful thing in your parlor or whatever, and like, but there's, it's coming in.
I want to put it in my parlor even more then.
Yeah, exactly. Depends on what kind of parlor you want to, you want to have, the kind of people you want to have over. So, dead color. I had just finished painting the still life when it began to move, which in truth it had been doing all along. And at once I found I had been doing great violence all along the seams of tulips, the dusky grapes who sang to the bats outside, the lemon-sized body of a bird who lobbed herself at the window, and both I and the painting began to rot like a cantaloupe, that is to say, from the inside and with temerity. And holding the painting to my softening body, I saw that garden that spends its life open-mouthed in jungle increase, in the biblical work of unguarded heat. Oh, well, now that I said baronial, here's the poem with baronial in it. In a past life. Tell me what you're married to, and I'll tell you the book to read to get out of it. Tell me which of these pet store fish you're most attracted to, and I'll tell you that most likely you are a peasant in a former life hundreds of years ago, in a valley that looked up onto the lush expanse of baronial wealth you served. I'll tell you about grief. I'll tell you where they've hidden the pigeon babies, sickly, Jurassic, Valentine pink. What do you want to hear? We carry this cheap penny whistle in case of a request on the wind. About grief, let me tell you, it's an oil slick in winter in a parking lot next to a frozen lake where men drill holes in the ice to get at the flesh beneath. Over time, you get used to that cheap song. Cleopatra splintered into many souls. There is an explanation for everything.
That's a very accurate description of baby pigeons.
They're so strange looking.
They are.
And you're like, this can't turn into that. Like that, how? And then somehow magically it does. I like the accompaniment.
Yeah.
Little,
The dance concert dress rehearsal is going to follow you for the latter half of this. Yeah.
I'm all about it.
No, you wouldn't have known if it was Heather's rehearsal.
Oh boy.
Yeah, Heather's rehearsal.
Yeah. I mean, great, yeah. Let him dance with us. Here's another news poem. This was when octopuses invade Welsh Beach, and these, remember this, like octopus, they just crawled up on the beach and they just all just died. They just en masse, and people were like, what? And it was just this, harbinger of doom, which it is. Which I mean,
Smartest aquatic animals, everybody.
So here we are. Octopuses invade Welsh Beach. An octopus walks out of the ocean and dies on the sand, gasping a terrible, wet human gasp, eyes fixed on horizon, strange land, waterline, the salt of a particular death, and then another comes until there are 20. We approach them one by one, a receding line, and their tentacles curl and wave, tighten and drop. There's nothing to be done. They are escaping a zone so barren it is called a zone. It is hard to breathe where they are meant to breathe, and so they have come to where they cannot breathe at all. It is better this way, each brain tells the other. Let us meet, like a noble army, our death on a beach in the night. Let us haunt it with our final shapes. It is quiet, except for this strange sighing. The hearts blink out, and the useless shell is set on the sand like a plinth. And then we, with our piteous one heart, say nothing, and the stars say nothing but make pictures, and we wait for the tide, and know less and then less. I'm trying to go with we have sort of 2 or 3 themes that are going, like this one goes in this category, and this one goes in this category. But maybe we can find something maybe else. This was an actual moment that we were talking about nature and encountering nature in a particular way and making from it art. And the question I always have is, does it want to be made into art? Or is it just like, leave me alone, I'm doing my thing and I don't need you? And there are a lot of poems about that too, just, thinking that the artist is this small, self-aggrandizing kind of figure, but nature is just like, we will win in the end, right? You two will be dust, and we're gonna go on with our business, right, over here. Like, I'm a little bird, and I don't care that you're making an elegy for me. I'm just pecking at this stuff, right? But this was a moment in a landscape a little bit like this, called A Hunger. It was a deer leg in a tree, bent like an architect's compass, hinged to meet the forked branch, also thin, also leafless, still in early spring. Hoof up, looking nothing so much as a goose head, a graceful upward angle which meant something had gone horribly wrong in the knee. And it had. Gnawed at the joint, ball and socket, naked and dry, though shin and foot were still furred, looked warm. Someone had found it, of course, or torn it away from the dogs, that mass of practical fury, and then hung or hanged or draped or set it like a gear into the tree, as if the world were made of nothing but hunger. Imagine the rest of the body deep in the woods, already swarmed in its second heaving life. It's the zombie in a way. This one is another Brian Catling inspired poem that made it into this book. And I think I snuck it in there at the last minute. I was like, can I just change some stuff? And they're like, oh my God, why? But made it in. Lost Angel Head. When I returned from the cragged valley, there was only butterless dinner, wine casket sunk, praying mantis in a dark glass jar, eyes like operas. I was then nothing-legged, the clouds taut with purpose. The hedge maze thickened around my once-mended brow. Toads utterly everywhere envied the valley's robin's egg straw hat. The valley and I walked arm in arm, believe me, until out of my sleeves came nothing again. And maybe we will do this one. So this is on the next page, Men of Poetry, and the first line references in, and I'm blanking on the actual name of the palace, but in Japan there is an ancient palace. Their security system was creaky floorboards. So they would actually create squeaking sounds under the floorboards, so you always knew who was sneaking up on you. So nobody could sneak up on you, which I thought was brilliant. What's that?
My parents built our stairs to be explicitly creaky.
There you go. It has an ancient precedent. You should maybe not tell them that, because I think it might validate them. But yeah, this references that. Men of Poetry. Only the ghosts of nightingales beneath the floorboards. Do not weep. With every step, you do not crush the fine bones of their bodies, so they sing out the alarm. Men cannot be stolen. They walk away, their robes silent in the blue night. I cut them like seeds. I cut them like teeth. Like teeth, they ache through one's body, wend their way around nerve and bone. In the great hall, the bones pile up, eye sockets smooth as an egg. The eggs of the native quail tremble on each plate, tremble all the way down the throat, and set the body to trembling. Oh, to watch one's companion weather this. It is like slicing out one's tongue and feeding it to a god. Another Brian Catling. See this obsession? Obsessed. An elephant man lives with a mirror from Francis Bacon's studio. Now, how can you not see a title like that and be like, I want it. Give it to me. I took it. Watch me in my stripes tonight. Watch my fingers crack an egg into a vase, candled and shivering. Here is the real horror. The house swims away like a gnat in milk from my body, like the middle of the night it is. My brain dark as bread. Oh, these? I've been collecting pond branches. They eat their hearts out for the moon. Don't you agree? The mind is a bone fruit, don't you agree? Have a simple shout, as from behind a painting. Let me speak plain. The Lord does not quake only the beastly. Believe me, I have cradled my own waxen head like a ship, like a woman. How are we doing here? So, any thoughts so far? Talk about anything?
Was that a question?
Would anyone like to say anything?
I would like to ask you why there's a giant of on the front of the book.
This was not my choice. As a book maker, I wish you could have been there to battle this for me. Yes, the giving up all control is and was very difficult, and ultimately I've come to terms with it. But it is an enormous of.
This is an attention grabber.
You're
You're like, oh, is that the whole title, or is there more?
That would be bold. You're like, this is my book of.
Oh. Someone's done it.
I
Someone's
mean,
gonna do it.
John Hollander wrote a whole beautiful essay about of, called Of the Poetics of a Preposition,
There you go.
arguing that it is maybe, had he read this book, he might be like, that's the right preposition to be on the cover of this book. It's actually,
Not, over a to, no.
yeah.
No, around. Let's see, so I could do another one that in the same category as the wolf and the octopuses. This is a half cat, half fox, or half cat, half cat, half fox.
Yes.
And scientists, them, they could not figure out which one it was. They're sort of debating. And the title is Chat Renard. If anyone speaks French, I'm sure you have a better accent than I. But it captures both the cat and the foxness. It is the halfness that confounds. Amalgam of hot and heather, slinking through the landscape like a Newman, soft with provocative teeth. What stories they have for you. Babies snatched in the candled night, returning and shifted behind the eyes, mewling new at darkness and asleep forever. That coiled bridge between worlds, blood, spinel dark underneath. What enters their dreams, hind legs quick and keen, balancing in a shaft of light, one eye illuminated, one hushed in the gloaming. Oh, more paint. Seems to be a lot of paint in this one. It's like having distance from it, you see things again, you're like, why more paint? And also words that you repeat over and over. Right? You're like, you gotta just have somebody go in and circle all of them and be like, you use this 8 times. You need to get rid of like 5.
That's all the time.
My death is a rose apple, and sometimes the green of paint under a tree where the artist has decided to capture his field and its cow and love in her festival dress. My death looks humbled by the flowers in a painting or by the red hat of a politician's wife. This red hat, my death says, is like all the flowers in one, as reflected in her face. The politician's wife has been dead for a long time and knows what my death is talking about, and even now is dying in a painting. A rotting purple fig on the table under the vase of tulips is an exercise in the perpetuate afternoon. I try to follow what my death is saying, but sometimes I drift off, and about this I feel guilty, because really I should listen, but oh, how I would like to touch my death's hand to my face. So those, let's see if there are some here we have not spoken about. Although there is a lot of, obviously, overlap, but and I do not remember at all where this came from or what it's about or which category this one fits into. No idea. You of Jupiter, I of the moon. The universe always tells the truth. A comet means justice or war or an easy birth or an end so slow it looks like birth. The moons of Jupiter talk to God, who plucks at their shores like a near-lost child. To observe the paths of the planets is to make lace in the mind, to pin an empty curve to the folds of immeasurable time. Listen, I've been sad. My face, it is only the light that glazes the beach grass and which reaches you now from an attendant wilderness. And another one about paint color. Puce. The color puce. In a dress the color of fleas, the queen starts a dying stampede. The shade, elusive as its namesake, uttered first by His Majesty upon encountering his wife among the famous cakes, the pearl-colored wine, women bright as pear orchards, hovers between old and young flea, between the lovers' mingled ichor, the flea in the flower, flea thigh, flea belly, flea back, new flea, dead flea, live flea. Valets dispatched from Fontainebleau to Paris sicken at the sight of the bug color on their own white linen, the perfect hue bubbling up from nights on straw mattresses, tumbling through dreams of their own lovers seen through flea-toned glass, the ancient negotiation begun anew. Love, we are not long the world. Areola, belly pink, secret ear silk, the bloodied pinch purples a gown. The queen plucks a swarming pair. So it's like the color of like flea blood. But it has its own name. So there you go. Origin of the world. A night sow chews the flesh of a peaching moon. The moon, through the flickers of prehistory, sings to its adopted children, the daffodils. Daffodils sink into the muscled earth, shoots jawing with the worms. The worms know several languages badly, and often the shade of their feelings, chiming, goat-smelling, witness, braid, goes untranslated. A goat eats an accidental worm in love with a nettle. The nettle has loved before, but not in these colors, not with this exquisite reckoning. The planets know only this music. The sun watches everything like a crocus. Then, another thing about painting. This was an encounter with, let's see, what's often so wonderful if there's some famous painter like Picasso, right? And then you see his or her juvenilia, right? Like all the stuff that made it to like the Picasso that we see today. And of course, Picasso's juvenilia is freaking amazing and not like anyone else's juvenilia in the world. But then you see it and you're like, oh, you can actually trace how he's thinking about things and where the little breakthrough came from and in this moment. And I saw an exhibition of his, they didn't really call it juvenilia, it was more like, I don't know, also call it pre-Picasso, but it felt pre-Picasso before Picasso became Picasso. And so there was a brilliant little sketch of a bull, right, that would then turn into Guernica, would then turn into these other, incredible images and moments of this particular image. And it looked like one of the first ones, and it was definitely a little off, but also incredibly intriguing and had its own wonderful gravity to it. And you're like, damn you, Picasso, you genius. I go wandering inside my head, alone. At the gate of my head, a bull the color of hot tar on yellowing paper. He ignores me, chews the perpetual grass. Beyond the gate is escape like the moon. It is not a known moon nor of poetry. It is a red moon and subtle, and I walk backwards to see where I have been. The gravity here is the weight of an apple on the highest branch. When I try to catch the apple as it falls, I am inadequate as a pebble-hued moth. Slim as a coin, the moth makes holes so great whole empires fall through them over and over. Let me return to the civilization whose god is a sunfish, flat as a palm. There my hands are nonsense. I just wave them around, astonished by their disobedience. They draw only the bowl, its face the face of a heart that has seen itself and walked through its halls all the same. And then, speaking of like ordering, in the chapbook, sonnet introduction is the last poem, and I liked putting the introduction last. It's not usually seen that way. Sonnet introduction. I must have had a mother. I must have had a hat and then given it away upside down so that someone would be compelled to fill their head with crocuses. I must have seen how golden the moon appears to a virgin of Demeter, wreathed in glowing wheat, betrothed to dirt. I also like besotted. Betrothed to dirt. I come from a village accessible only by boat. You can see how the heat clings to me, how from my ankles dangle netted glass, blue lobsters, pieces of kindling, 4 tamed crickets ready for circus life. Sweet hedge maze, verdant under every planet, I will show you what the center is made for. Here is my hat. Something has to change. Okay, I think I'm good.
Do you have any last questions or anything you wanted to raise or ask?
Sound like you're saying, have you any last requests?
Yeah.
Good gracious.
Don't eat the cheese.
Yeah.
No, we can save that for a more informal thing too.
Thank you so much.
Awesome, thank you all so much.
I will do.
Yeah, go for it.
I'm going to do just a very quick plug at the end. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you to our friends at IT for doing the stream and making this recording possible. And thank you all for coming. And just my quick reminder, Rachel has the books for sale over here. She will sign them for you. I'm volunteering her. I have not run that by her, but I feel pretty confident. And come back this Tuesday for our very own Gray Bulla coming home to Wells with his newly published novel, hot off the presses. It was just launched this past week, right?
Tuesday.
So that'll be an exciting new addition to our series. I hope to see you then. And yeah, let's give Rachel Abramowitz one more round of applause.
Wonderful observations and questions. That was really fun. That sort of dynamic, like, yeah, everybody should do that.
It's better. Chris hates it. He just wants to sit here and listen to poems for an hour.
No, that's not, you got me wrong.
But this was the thing that started in the pandemic where we went virtual, and I was like, this is terrible. There's no reason for anyone to log in at this time to just have some, like, it's being recorded, they can just log in whenever. Like, there's no incentive to be here at this time, but it's awful to be the reader who's just like reading into a Zoom void of just themselves and like the host and one person, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, what if we have it be actually like what if there's a payoff for being live? You know, that you're actually here talking to people like you're humans. And I was
Right.
like, it's much better.
Brilliant.
Right?
There you go. You got the soft product. The hard product is the reading itself. The soft product is the ability to interact.
There we go. I'm selling an experience
That's exactly it.
for free. I'm an excellent businessman.
That's where you made money.
She went to business
No,
school.
Yeah, you can tell me where I went horribly awry. Oh my God.
Love it. I love it.
It was great. It's so fun to hear these too, and to have like been sitting and talking about the students too.
Yeah.
It's like,
And I said thank you.
it's great. Oh.
That's very good.
Sorry.
It's always my thing, I always, like, I get blocked on one word.
Yeah, I was
You
focused
Yeah.
on that, and when I saw that note, I like